This is a companion video to a video I made about surf guitar, or surf music, and chord progression. And I wanted to talk about some concepts of creating a melody or soloing over these chord changes, right? Particularly the first one. We're gonna decode this one because once you know it in the key of A minor, you can move it around anywhere. And there's one particular chord I want to focus on, and that is going to be this E chord, or I'm even going to call it an E7 chord in this circumstance, right? So the first thing is that if we think about playing over the first three chords, one thing we can do here is that we can really just stay in the A minor tonality, right? A minor scale, right? Okay. Now that doesn't mean I'm starting every note starting on an A note, right? I'm trying to match the notes from the A minor scale that work for the chords and match the chord tones. So for instance, over this A minor chord, okay, check this out. I'm going to focus on A, C, and E, right? Because those are the three notes that make up an A minor triad. So for this G chord, again, I'm only going to reference notes that are in the A minor scale, but I'm going to try to match the ones that work with G. And actually, we do have all three notes of a G triad within the A minor scale. Right? The same is true for the F. Okay, so we have F, A, C, right? Okay, now when we get to this E7 chord, things are going to get different. Okay. But before we get there, I just want to mention that these A, C, and E notes, there are anchor tones. We play those on the strong beats, right? So that means that on beats 1 and beats 3, it makes a lot of sense to lay on those notes because they have the most resolution, right? We could play a lot of different notes in between them, right? And this is actually where kind of modes come in a little bit. And I'm not going to go super deep into this now because I want to, focus on the 5 chord, but check this out. I'm going to put in passing notes here in between these. So even if I use the passing tones to get between all the notes of the triad, these are pulled from the A minor scale. Okay? But you'll notice that the scale tones are passing tones, right? They're not the main anchors that we're landing on, our main pillars. The anchors are all notes that are in the chord, right? Because they give us the most resolution. The same thing goes with this G chord. I'll just do one more of these before we move into the E chord here. So again, I'm going to turn them into eighth notes here, and we're going to create some passing tones. All right, there we are. And so now these are still notes from the A minor scale, right? But we're starting and ending on. I just went through the triad, right? And it started on the root, ended on the fifth, but I used chord tones as a means to navigate through it. Now, the tablature at the bottom, don't necessarily pay attention to that because there's a number of different ways we could play this on the guitar, and this is just one of them, and it's the way that it auto-generates it. And I'm not going to spend time right now to talk about fingerings for that because it's situational rather than there being a right or wrong. It has to do where you're coming from and where you're going. Right? Now let's talk about this E7 chord. Now this is where I think you can take some pretty cool liberties and create a sound, and it's actually a sound that you know, but it really works well over it. Now, in my other video, I discussed about making the 5 chord in a surf chord progression, a minor chord progression, major or dominant. And by the way, please subscribe to my channel if you're digging the content, and like the video, leave comments. And you can also check me out at anatomyoftone.com, where I also have a lot of videos about guitar, surf guitar, tone, etc. But please reference back to the video about this chord progression because I think you could also find it helpful. Now, I'm going to use a very special mode to play over this E chord here. And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go F. What's going on here? Okay. here we are, right? And this is not a typical E major or E mixolydian scale, because it's got a flat 2 in it, right? Right, it's got a flat 6 and a flat 7th in it. Right? Well, there is a mode that this works with. Okay, so why worry about calling it Phrygian dominant, or why worry about a mode? Well, it mostly has to do with being able to remember a recipe. Right? This is one of the reasons that we study theory. It's not necessarily where we start to write music from. I never start to write music that way, but it has a lot to do with being able to tag it and remember it later. Right? If you make a great recipe once, why not remember it so you can make it again? Right? So this is one of the ways that, one of the reasons we have modes and scales, and we spend time learning them so that we can reproduce sounds that we like. Right? So this particular sound is Phrygian dominant. Now I'm just going to lean over here and play it on the piano so you can hear it, because that's the way I could play the chord and the scale at the same time, which is not something we could do very easily on the guitar, right? So if I'm going to play an E7 chord, right, because I'm playing E7, now check out the scale, right? So I'm going to go. So it's a nice sound, right? Right? It's a nice sound. And if I get my guitar and play it, I'm just going to play it over the 5 chord. I'm not going to worry about playing any other chords in the progression right now, but you definitely hear stuff like this. Right? It's a nice sound. Now if we think about this, right? I'm just playing through this chord progression that I talked about in a prior video. A minor, G major, right? To F major, to E major, right? Now, over the first A minor chord, I can play stuff from the A minor scale, and over the second chord, I'm going to play stuff from the G. But again, only using notes from the A minor scale. F, same thing. Right, again, F chord, only using notes from the A minor scale. And then we get to this E chord. This is where I could. Again, this G sharp existing in there has to do with creating this nice leading tone in order to go back to our tonic note in A minor. Right? So it's nice. I could, right, now the G chord, now the F chord, now to the E, Phrygian dominant, back to A minor, G, right, now F, E Phrygian dominant, right, and it's really nice. You could really use that G sharp to push back into the 1, right? It just really helps create nice tension to lead back to that 1 minor chord. Again, I'm only using that Phrygian dominant mode over the E7 chord, the last chord, right? And I could do this in any position if I wanted to. It could be up here in A minor, right? And then go to G, and then F, then to the Phrygian dominant, back to A, G, right? And here now comes the F. There it is, right? It's a really nice sound. I find it very helpful to know music theory and be able to rationalize that I'm playing, because it allows me to create more recipes. You could just memorize the box and just have some fun with it, which is cool for getting used to the sound. But to have the most control over it, having a good sense of harmony and understanding the intervallic makeup of chords, right, and what are the notes that are in the various modes and scales can really help you solo and create more interesting solos rather than just kind of relying on finger positions and patterns that you learned before. As unless I have to get through something really quickly in like an emergency situation, I tend to not think patterns as much as I think music and harmony, right? Okay, so let me know if you have any questions about this, and we continue the conversation. Till next time.